Good morning, guys. This is the official kickoff right here, and one of the things I wanted to check in with you before we do the little presentation I have. For July and August, we're going to go to one meet a month, right? I think we might have talked about that. I just wanted to get a sense from you all. Would it make sense to do that in June too, or do you want to do two, and if people show up, great, or you just want to like lock it into one for June as well? Any thoughts?
Well, I like the two, but I'll go anywhere that everybody wants to do.
I'm good either way.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Me
All right.
also.
Well, I'll like we do, we will set up the next one, and then if it makes sense, we'll set up the one after that. So we'll just continue in this space, and then come July, we'll go to a one, and then one in August. All right. So anything else anybody wants to share? Like that we might be some good information about anything upcoming? No. All right. So this is something that came out of, I believe, the meet that DC pretty much ran with respect to weights and couplers, car weights. And I forget who asked about this, but this is just a few slides on what I did to convert the standard general pilot that comes already as part of the frame with the precision scale early rail. So there's your formed frame with the pilot, and then here is what is sometimes referred to as the chicken coop or horizontal frame pilot. And the one place I just wanted to highlight was cut it right as close to the frame and leave as much as that as possible. But I'm going to say more about that later, because that presented a bit of a conundrum. Let's see. So fabricating a U-link to the drawbar, that was the whole idea. Is like, in addition to adding this very cool looking feature of a horizontal pilot, how do you make it functional with the drawbar? So the first thing I did with some of these was I notched the upper center brace. So just take that out, so the U-link that would go in here, there'd be room enough for the end of the drawbar to be able to pivot up and down. Otherwise, if that stays in place, it's kind of stuck in a perpetual erect. It's like it OD'd on Viagra. So you don't want to deal with that. So the next is to drill 2 holes just to the either side of that as close as possible, because the idea for me was to hide it, so it would be so overt. And then it's just taking 0.019 brass wire, and the holes are drilled to either side of that center brace. I don't know if you can see my cursor. And I wanted to highlight again, I think I might have mentioned this in the past, there's like 6 of these different pliers that you can get from Micromark that are just fabulous. And then that's approximately where it would be positioned in the new horizontal pilot. Next was, once the attached pilot was removed, it's a matter of finding the exact center of the end of that frame. Drill the hole, and then drill a hole in the pilot itself, again, finding the exact center. This is a very precise measurement that you got to do. Otherwise, your pilot could be a bit skewed off the frame. And then I put the pin in obviously the pilot, locked it in with super glue, and then brought them together and they were pretty much like, you know, with the super glue, they're set in about a minute. Yeah,
It looks like, can you go back? Looks like on the right-hand photo, looks like you cut the tab off that came with the precision scale pilot.
oh yeah, thank you. Right. Yeah, there is, like, if you go back up, this piece here. Yes, thank you, DC. That was removed. And then, so that was just a straight U-link that I put in there. And then I decided that I wanted the drawbar to have some more mobility. So all I did was, in that U that I put in the end of the brass, once I put the U in, I just bent it up a 90-degree angle. And by having it pushing up instead of out, it allowed the drawhead, the drawbar, again, even more flexibility. And in some cases, it would actually stay in a horizontal position, so you wouldn't have to fudge with pliers and fingers and everything else as you're trying to, like, lock it into a pin and into a link rather, and a pin. So this is the U-link inserted. You can barely see it, but I did the same thing. It was just a couple of holes drilled to the opposite sides of that center brace. And here's the link going through the drawhead. And there's your drawbar. I keep saying drawhead, drawbar for precision. That big round section there gets removed. That's the sprue. Drill a hole in the back end for the U-link. And then if you're doing just a straight U-link into the face of the pilot, it needs to have a twist of 45 degrees, as you see here, because the U-link goes in the opposite direction if you'd allowed it to stay in its packaged form. And then I also burnished off the edge of this so that it would rotate up. Let's see, is there another one? And then the other thing I did is I drilled a hole in the base of the pilot to insert a pin so that the drawbar would have an anchor and to rest on the pilot without flapping around. Let's see what we got here. Boom.
Oh, there.
Trying to move your faces out of the way. You're right in the middle of my screen. There we go. Yep. So center brace, U-link. Yes. So this is the third way to do this. Stop. I actually put the link straight up, and I drilled holes down into that center brace. This way I didn't have to do any torquing on the drawbar, and it would just lift up and down. You can see it's holding its own like that. And there's the pin on the end of the pilot. That's the securing, so it doesn't, like I say, flap around. What else about that? Nothing. Oh yeah, not yet. And then let's see. This is the thing that was persnickety for me is I had to cut off the end section of the chicken coop pilot because the pilot wheels were touching it and shorting it. As you can see here, and the next slide will give you a more of a clear view. But the frame of the locomotive, after you cut off the pilot, doesn't stick out beyond the pilot wheels. So consequently, they're hitting the edge of the chicken coop pilot. Wait a minute. Oh, I got it. Oh, that's the one I wanted to show you. So here you can see, here's a crux. And you can see how far the frame out goes out beyond the wheels. And here's the Mantua. And you can see the wheels actually protrude past the frame. So in thinking about how I would do this going forward, one thought was to, will this show it? What I might do is when I cut the, let me see, I want to get a different shot for you.
Why don't
When
you go
I
back
cut-
to that first picture?
When I cut this off, I might just cut this out to here. So I
Yeah.
have this other like 12, 18 inches of length. And then just.
That's what I was gonna.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that seems to me the easiest way to do it versus fabricating or jury rigging something else.
I think that's a good idea, Tom. Now, if you thought it extended too far out, you could take that sander of yours and slowly sand it back a little bit.
Right. Yep. But I think the width of that pilot is enough to get it beyond, so that I think you gain that much by leaving that much of the pilot in there. That's one of the next.
How did you attach the new pilot?
The new pilot?
Yeah, how'd you attach it?
Right here.
Not where, but how?
Oh, super glue.
Okay.
Loctite super glue. And I used a pin to make sure that it was lined up, centered. See the pin on the pilot?
Yeah.
And then the hole to the filter on the left, so that pin would slide into there. I just loaded up with super glue, not only in a hole, but across the whole face of that frame. And hold it for your 30 seconds and you're good to go.
I was wondering if you soldered it or like you said, super glue. I didn't think that was gonna be strong enough.
Yeah, the super glue amazingly has been I haven't had any problem with those little dogs.
Tom,
Yeah.
question. In the slide on the left there, for this type of mounting, did you also file down the top of the pilot before you installed that, or did
No.
this case?
This
Okay.
is straight. I didn't do any alterations on that center brace or anything. That was another plus in terms of one less thing to do, although it's minor, because the U-link goes just right over top on the face of the brace. So there's nothing about the brace itself up in here that interferes with this. Yeah. Yeah, so no adjustments were needed there.
Cool.
This is something I thought I'd share with you guys. Early on, I'd get a wire and I think, well, let me see, how big is this got to be? And I was always measuring the wire and the bit, or something in the bit, to figure out which drill bit is most appropriate. So what I did was I just made this chart from up here on the top left, a number 50 to a number 8. These are the sizes of drill bits, right? And then the numbers below, so there's actually 4 rows here. The numbers below that begin with 0 are the decimal calculation for wire and what have you. So if I had something that was needing a 0.15 inch hole, I knew it was a 79 bit, because some instructions will tell you what size the hole needs to be, but I had no clue as to figure out, wow, what size bit is that? So I just made this and I use this a lot. So just a little tip for the day. And with that, I will stop the share. Any questions?
Great.
I had one, I couldn't follow on that drawbar you had where it stayed up some. If you didn't notch it and you have your U thing wide enough that it can flop, then what keeps it up? Because if your U is tight, that's going to bind.
On the U-link where the drawbar was straight out.
Yeah.
It's a very light tension. It has to do with the tightness of the U-link, where it just it was luck of the draw almost. I just put it in there and it held it exactly like I wanted it to.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a experimentation that you got to do with how wide you make that U-link.
So you have no binding going side to side? Oh,
No,
you hit it perfect. Okay.
no, because it's in like this, right? It's in like
Mhm.
this. So the only binding is right here to keep it straight up, but it will easily pivot inside in the U-link. Yep. Let's see.
Now, Tom, I'm going to try to describe this correct. What I would effectively call the brass bracing bars that come off from the boiler to the pilots. I assume that's not original Mantua. You had to effectively get the appropriate width brass wire, cut it at the appropriate length, and crimp the bottoms or something to flatten it out, like you gave
Precision
it more
Scale makes
prototypical
those.
look.
Precision Scale makes those. They're boiler stanchions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can get them from Precision Scale, and there happens to be 2 holes in the boiler of the Mantua, because there's 2 pins. There's a pin on each of those stanchions, and it slips right in. And for the most part, yeah, it's an easy upgrade.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of parts that are on those Generals that are not original. I mean, I think I counted once. There's like almost 24 parts that were not standard.
Now, on those, the boiler stanchions there, do they, do you glue them to the boiler frame or to the pilot?
Don't glue them to the pilot.
You don't glue them to the pilot?
No,
just the
this way,
boiler.
when you take the boiler off, those stanchions are actually glued to the boiler, and they're just resting on the pilot.
Okay, I never noticed that all the years I've been up there. I never noticed how they were attached. I never noticed they were loose either on the pilot.
Right. Yeah. That's, you got to get that bend just right on there so it looks like they're attached to give the ongoing illusion. Yeah. One of the things that I've worked on the last couple of days is I've had so much trouble with getting the locomotives to run continuously without stopping and starting, as DC knows. What I realized was that when I replaced the wheels in the pilot truck and the tender trucks, they were too short, or I didn't squeeze the frames around them tight. So consequently, when those wheels, if those wheels aren't touching inside those journals, then there's it loses its connection. So I took 2 sets of, actually it was just 1 tender, took the trucks of each one, removed the wheels, put in longer axle wheels, and really squeezed down on the side frames so that there's hardly any movement, but there's enough where the wheels spin. And I have this one locomotive that was stopping and starting all over the place. I ran it last night, DC. It's the Thompson, and it's just run. I was like, so it's funny how there's so many little things that could go sideways with these. And I should have picked that up in the beginning when I replaced those wheels. I was even looking, I was like, boy, this feels too loose, but I just let it go. So that was my learning from the last couple of days.
Thanks
Tom,
for
I took
sharing.
note on the Bradley Hunter stack that it looks like you put perhaps a washer at the very top of the stack in order to get that true Bradley Hunter look at the top there. What did you use? What did you use, a washer? What did you use?
Man, you know what? Let me see. Is that the one? Yeah. This one here? Whoop.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know, it was one of those things where I had these parts. Don't ask me where I got it from because it was very flat. And oops. Yeah, but it is a washer. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a series of washers years ago that were the correct thickness for that, for placing on top there. And I don't know what happened to them. I'm like, you know, it's one of those things you just want to hang yourself because you forgot where you put the damn things.
Right. Right. Yep. Yeah. I got that tip from this guy, Kenny Pruitt, who sold me a lot of his stuff, actually almost all of his stuff. And that's what he used. And matter of fact, this actually, is this a Radley Hunter?
Is that a precision scale?
No, I think this is the one where the lower part of the stack is a General, comes with the General. I cut the top off, and then I think I cut the top of a Radley Hunter. I don't know what I did, but this is a whole different stack that I put on top of it. So it's a homemade job that doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet, probably. I was just trying to figure out ways to, how can I come close to replicating this? That goes back about 16 years ago, I think.
Well, you know, I took note on one of your pictures from whatever it was, your blog or something else I saw, that you you used whatever, different washers. One looked thicker than the other or something like that on one of your engines. And it was in a shot of two of your engines together, two of your locomotives together. I don't know. I was just kind of wondering what you used on this one. This looks like your Texas, if I saw that correctly.
On the left?
Yeah.
That is the, I think, that is my General that has been in a box for the last 2 years because I haven't retooled it.
Oh, okay.
Yep. 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 And when you talk, yeah. So, but I don't, it could be, I might have experimented with different washers. That's an interesting prompt for me. What I've been doing lately though is I have a small notebook and I have it broken up so that I have like maybe 3 pages devoted to every locomotive. And every time I do anything on any of those locomotives, I record it. Because I keep forgetting when's the last time I lubed it, you know, did I change the spring, blah, blah, blah. So that has been immensely helpful to know that I've already done something and I don't need to repeat it, or I thought I did something, but I actually didn't. So, and that's another thing I learned from Al. He logged a lot, and there were stuff that he didn't log that Ron and I and probably DC can attest to, because we saw stuff like, what the hell is this from, or what? But he was very prolific with keeping his shit organized. It was great. Yeah.
Good
Hey,
plan.
Tom, on those boiler stanchions, if you super glued the bottom onto the pilot, is the little nubs that go into the boiler, would they be long enough that you could just glue it onto the pilot and stick them in the holes on the boiler?
You could, but what would happen after a while, because you have to bend them slightly to open them up.
Yeah.
And it's such a small measurement that they might not bend fully against the boiler and they might protrude a little bit. it was a lot easier just to put them on the boiler because they had the pins. So that was another element of a security versus just metal on metal, like the bottom of the brace onto the pilot.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've never had any problem with that. What else did I want to tell you? No. I think that's it.
Tom, I need to abuse your mind for a minute here. Did you ever attempt to hand make a horizontal rail pilot? Did you ever try to make one of those WARR pilots, whatever, out of styrene or
like
brass
a
or something?
precision scale? No.
Just use the precision. I just wondering.
Yeah.
I keep looking at it and going, I don't know if it'd be worth it,
Talk to George about that. He tried to, remember he tried to scratch build one. And he was thrilled when he learned about the precision scale part.
Yep.
Oh God, he was. Yeah, so much so. He's at Cheyenne this weekend. Yeah, and he was so trying to get locomotive done so we can get there with it that he emailed me, "Hey man, do you mind if I get one of your pilots, and when mine finally come in, I'll just send you one." So we did that so he'd get his engine done.
Oh.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have had it done in time because he didn't receive the pilots until like the end of the like Friday last week. He would have hell of time trying to get it done.
Right. Oh, that was good of you.
Well, it just anything to help the cause. God's sake,
Right.
he's also going to present the thing later on to us.
Yeah.
So anything to definitely help that cause.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be
Needless to say, I took 90% credit for the engine, which of course went over with like a lead balloon with George. But hey, what can you say, right?
You want the pilot? Give me the credit.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. God.
So let me share this with you, Tom. You were looking at your little decimal, your smaller. Can you guys see that?
Oh.
Can you back it?
Oh,
yeah.
leave it right there, Ron. Perfect.
Okay, so it's a drill bit gauge, and I have little ones like this and larger ones that go beyond this. It's just from my wood shop. I can never remember what size drill bit it is. So if they get laid someplace and then I don't come back to them, and then it's like, hell, is that? I do the same thing with little ones. It's like I'm working with 2 or 3 different sizes on my workbench, and I lay one down, and then I go, wife says, can you do this for me? And I come back down and I go, oh damn, what size drill bit, what little drawer should it go in my little storage case? So I got these. So you can basically insert the bit in the little drilled holes, and it's got the size of the drill bit, and then also the dimensions of it in a decimal point.
Decimal.
Yep.
Oh,
and I've got bigger ones, but this is the tiny one that I have that I keep with my little drill bit set.
Oh, that's a good. I'm making my list of things to get, and that's
It's at Micro Marks, and they're fairly reasonable. In fact, that the ones at Micro Marks for models are actually more expensive than the ones that I'd go to like Home Depot and buy for like my woodworking shop.
Yep.
Those are like those are like $5. They're cheap.
I've not seen them that small. So what's the name? Wire gauge, or what are they?
Yeah, it's drill gauge.
Drill gauge.
Yep. I can give you the part number.
Ooh, if you would, please.
It's 14521. Yeah, I just leave drill bits laying around, and it's like, and then I come back. Because I've got all these little projects laying around, and then a drill bit associated with. It's like, what size drill bit is that? And the on woodworking drill bits, they're big enough that they actually engrave the size of it down on the shaft of the drill bit. So a lot of times you can just, but as my eyesight, that gets even harder to do. So the drill gauge is real nice to have.
Yeah, it saves you the hassle of having to pull out the micrometer.
Yeah, no kidding. Yep.
That's good. That's good. Okay, I got that on my list.
I noticed that some foreign drill bits that I've gotten on eBay, the shafts are the same size between, let's say, a 79 and an 80, though the drill portion theoretically is different.
Interesting.
So just be careful. I mean, I'm excited about that. I was going to ask Tom to get me one when he puts in his order, and I'll pay you for it when you when I'm
Next
up there.
time you're up here.
Where are you guys buying the drill bits?
Well, I don't buy any anymore because I bought out the hobby shop in town that closed down like a year and a half ago. And they had the rack on the wall and they had all these bits. And I said, how much you want for that? And they said like $50. And I just took the whole thing.
That was cool. What about the rest of you guys?
I have been getting mine on eBay, but you just have to be careful of the seller, because sometimes the way they make the points is just there's no way you're going to center it in anything.
Yeah, I ran into a jeweler supply, and the drill bits, I can get 10 of them for like $4. Okay, cheapest I've found, and they also have so you want to say a storage bin that'll hold like 10 or 12 bits in each spot. So I'll dig up the address and send the link out to everybody.
Have you
Thank
used
you.
those bits, Tom?
Pardon?
Have you used those bits?
No, I have not yet.
Are you
Some of the
planning?
guys in one of my other groups has been using them.
Oh, and okay. I was going to say, as long as you got some, I would prefer that if you're going to send something out to the group, that there's some credibility that you can attach yourself to it so that somebody doesn't buy it and find out that they're crap.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, one of my 0 and 30 groups, they are using them. That's where I got the link from.
Perfect. Perfect.
Also in Dallas, Texas, there's a guy who it's like Army surplus, but it's for defense contractors and so on. So he has a lot of tools and equipment that are from airplane and defense contractors. And that I got a lot of my bits. He had a cabinet just full of those things, and that was a good source. But it's like a specifically
Still as a source?
manufacturing surplus. I'd have to ask
Is
my
that still a
boss.
source? Is that still a source, Walt?
Yes, yeah, they're still open. It's so from back in the 50s and 60s. I don't know how much he's going to stay open, but because he had like super cheap stuff.
Right. I like cheap as long as it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One amazing thing he has, if you ever get a chance, you know the kind of wire strippers that are like pliers that come like wire strippers we're used to like this.
Yeah, I got a set. Yeah.
Okay, well the cheap kind you normally get at like Home Depot and things like that. These actually cut the insulation.
Right.
But for defense and aircraft, sort of higher end stuff, they make it where it just has a little ridge and it pinches the insulation off. So that way you're sure you don't cut any wires.
Oh,
As opposed to being like, $20 at Home Depot, those kind of things go into like $150 or so. But this guy got them surplus because at the end of each project, they'd sell off their tools. They always have fresh tools. So you could pick up that higher end type for, 20 or $30.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I love that tool. I've used it several times on the layout. Yeah. Wiring. So, Ron, when you start doing your wiring, have you thought about how you're going to do that? Because I've got wires from my leads, and it's spaghetti under there. because I got them coming down like every section.
Right.
And I bought these little panels from, it might have been Micro Mark, where I can at least channel all of those to one space. And then from there, two wires run to the bus.
Mhm.
But I've not been able to figure out how to bypass the spaghetti methodology.
Well, I'm hoping in the cross braces that when I drill holes, that'll at least create some to run the bus lengthways down and then run the feeders up.
Right.
That'll control some of it.
Yeah,
But that's the thought process, to try to
Right.
keep some order to it.
right.
Now,
Yeah,
did you solder the feed wires, or did you use the what do they call them?
Suitcases.
Yeah, the suitcases. Did you
Suitcase.
use suitcase joiners?
originally I soldered, but then I became a suitcase
That's what I was thinking about using.
devotee. Yep,
I wasn't really thinking it would be a good idea to be soldering like over my head.
right,
While I sit on the floor.
right. Well, that's why I bought the pliers Walt was talking about, because I had to open up a space in
Yeah.
there. Originally, before I even know about those, I was taking an X-Acto knife and trying to
Oh.
cut, and I'm like, this is not right. Somebody's got to know something different. And
Yep.
sure enough, and then I was doing the soldering, and then somebody says, "Oh, by the way, don't you know about suitcases?" I'm like, "Where the hell were you 2 years ago, man?"
Well, now, wait a minute. The suitcase, is that for connecting the wires coming from the track to the bus wire?
Yes.
You could, yeah.
Yeah, because, well, I'm going to want that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's 2 or 3 different sizes depending upon the size of your bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they are effortless. I mean, you just clip it on the bus, lock it in, slide your other wires in, clamp it down, you're done.
Oh,
Takes less
yeah.
than-
That's
I
the
love
way
it.
that's got to be done.
Yeah.
Did you get the special pair of pliers that you can get to do it, or did you just do regular old pliers?
I use just my vice grips.
Your vice, yeah.
Works fine.
I've seen it done both ways. They've got videos on Model Railroader
Mm-hmm.
on their railroad. They've got Dave. I can't think of his last name now.
David Pop.
Yeah, doing wiring, and he uses the suitcase.
Right.
And he's done it both ways. With
Right.
a tool and then with just a pair of vice grips.
He's fabulous. I mean, the videos that those guys do are really, I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. I was just watching what's his name? Luke Towen again.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
Because I'm getting ready to do that new section from almost 2 years ago that we put in. And I was trying to figure out what's the best way to do the water thing and all that. And I just watched a couple of his videos and I was like, got it. He's so meticulous and so crisp with how he explains. The visuals are fabulous. Yeah. There's a couple. Ron's trains and things.
Yeah, he does. I'm going to send Luca an email and say, could you please scratch build a turntable and give him dimensions and build a diorama. I'm looking for somebody that's got it, because everything I've seen on the internet are those 120 foot, the big ones, and I'm like, I can't modify that. I can't change it because it's not going to be 120 foot in the roundhouse. It's I'm trying to think of what it is, but it's much smaller than that. So I'm going to.
Is it a little bit longer than maybe a general?
Yeah, it's well, you saw the pit when we were in Martinsburg, and I've got dimensions someplace. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but yeah, it's about the size of, it's big enough for a general basically, and there's nothing out there.
Have you seen Diamond Scale?
Diamond Scale, that's what I was trying to think of.
Is diamonds okay? Let me write that.
They're
down.
the ones that I have.
Yeah.
It's a clean pit. It's got a stone wall. It's got a wooden bridge.
Yeah, even if I've seen David Pop did a build of I want to say an O scale, and it may have been from Diamond. So I was looking for one, but yeah, I was figuring I was trying to figure out if I bought a turntable, how could I like take the guts in the motor and modify it, and because dimensionally there's nothing out there commercially that's small enough, except for I'll check them out and see what
I think they make two of them. One is just a flat table, and the other is the where they have that square frame. I forget what, there's a technical term for that.
And the A-frame?
No, it's a box frame right in the
Oh,
center.
gallows,
Thank you, Vince.
gallows and A-frame.
Right. Yeah, and if you do that, the only challenge I had is, of course, the fellas that built it put them in for me. There is a brass wiper, big brass wiper that goes around the center shaft. Well, over time, for some reason, it doesn't stay tight, and I got to figure out a way to get in there and make sure that it's wrapped on the center pin, because it'll
disconnect.
Yeah, as it goes around. Yeah, but I love them. They look great. They're the perfect size. You know, it's like anything else. If I had the time, I would have done it myself. Now it's a matter of
one of his manual. Well, I mean, it works electronically, but on the old one where people would push it around, if you could model a figure to sit there and hold it, and that it'd be smooth enough that it would look like he's pushing it around.
The diamond scales are manual.
Yeah, they're manual. I've seen the bigger scale.
You get a little a wheel, and there's a shaft, and you just rotate it by hand, which is very cool. And I like the idea about sticking a figure on the end and that's it.
There's a model at the B&O Museum sitting next to the actual turntable. Somebody built a model of the turntable.
HO scale?
Yeah. It's in a glass display case that sits right next to the real turntable.
So I would imagine the model's built on what they knew exactly what was there at the time.
And I just remember that because he mentioned a little scale. They have a little scale figure standing next to the
right. In Martinsburg, was that did we find out if that it was probably a wooden?
The original one was wooden.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. I got to tell you, as soon as I'm done with this call, I'm on the railroad. Every time I get on these calls, it's like, okay, time to do something on the trains, man. That's great.
Hey, Rob, in your roundhouse, are you going to do the floor like they had in Martinsburg?
Yeah. I'm going to, I don't know whether I'm going to have like a million pieces of wood turned sideways.
I've got something for you.
But I'm thinking about how am I going to simulate that the way they did the floors. For those of you that are not familiar with, so the flooring in the Martinsburg facility, they took blocks of wood and laid them on end so the end grain was standing up, and basically tiled them all across the floor. So that way, if they dropped tools on and then they were covered with, I don't know, what were they covered with, DC?
Something like creosote or something
like that. Some funky material. But it was amazing because the floors aren't like that now. The floors are just wood or just dirt or concrete that's been poured recently or after the Civil War. But they had actual blocks because they were selling bricks from the roundhouse that collapsed. So I bought a brick and I was trying to convince them to sell me one of those wooden blocks. And they said, we only have a couple of these, we can't sell them. So so I have one of the bricks there, and I have a little brass plate on it that says Martinsburg Roundhouse.
So that's what you were doing over in the corner all by yourself?
Yeah.
Roundhouse, right?
Yeah, I was trying to finagle that. But
So Ron, were you just saying that you're considering building a floor where they had those like 4x4s that went straight into the ground?
Yeah.
You know, I found Evergreen makes, I don't know where I put it, but that's what Evergreen makes, a tile
Huh,
texture. And it looks like the tops of 4x4s. It's perfect.
that would be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yep. I'll find that and I'll send you the part number. I was just looking for it just now.
Shoot it to me. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is the building that was the most I mean, the roundhouse was obviously neat, but the building that was most fascinating was the one where they actually, the second story, the floor of the second story was suspended from the roof. That was built way after the Civil War. It's like, damn. That was so cool to build that building, but it's post Civil War, so that's the time period.
Right.
It wasn't on the layout, or it wasn't on the facilities at the time. But yeah.
Ron, I'm sorry, but what scale do you model in?
HO.
HO. And you're doing Martinsburg, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Can I then assume you have camels available for that?
Right now I have like 4 of them disassembled that Al, myself, Jerry, we were actually the builders. I think that who else was involved? Jerry did all the design work for Shakeway, so we built products out of brass, and then the boiler and all that are done out of that plastic. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah. So we have all the parts. I actually have the prototype that actually ran. Al ran it for me, so I know they work.
Excellent. Sitting
on my workbench, and then I have he made sure I got 4 of them. So I have 4 of them sitting there in various stages of putting them together. So yeah, they're very cool. Because DC and I talked at one time about, okay, so is there anything out there that we could convert? And I remember you making a recommendation. We were emailing back and forth. You're like, well, you could use this. So yeah, so that worked out really well. But yeah, we got all the parts. We ordered things we ordered in bulk from England to get all the different parts that we needed.
The Rumford drivers?
Yep. Yeah, all that stuff. And Al has a detailed manual about how to put these together handwritten. So of course he was doing all the original construction, and then he was taking detailed notes of what he did. So I have this folder with all of these instructions on how to put these things together. So, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set them aside, and I'm going to build a General from scratch, because I've never done that before. So I think before I jump into, no, I've never built a General. Al used to get so pissed at me because he'd go, why don't you do this? Just start doing it. And it's like, I don't know, because I have 8 of them. In fact, there's one right now on eBay that's buy it now for $69, and I have to like grab my hand and pull it away from the mouse to keep from buying it. Because I
build one from scratch.
Well, take it out and just build a General from start to finish. I've never done that before.
Like take the kit and build it.
Kit and using Al stuff, go through, and I've never done that before. So I figured before I jump into this sort of experimental project of building a camel, I would do one of those first and get it to run.
Good idea.
And then go from there, and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's.
Well, I thought he had one of those camels running.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. In fact, the last time we were together, the whole time we were together, it was running on his Great Northern Railroad. He was running all the way around the track.
Right.
So he had it up and running.
Yeah.
So proof of concept.
Yeah. Yep. Vince, what are you working on these days?
So I put together, let's see, can you share a little bit? Yeah. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm not so good with Zoom.
No worries.
There it is. There's so many different versions. So I remember when Andrew was with us last, I guess it was about a month ago. So he got me so interested in this New York elevated. So I went
Yeah.
back and found my old pictures, and I hope you don't mind, but I'll put a folder on our
That'd
group.
be great.
Yeah, it doesn't kind of fit the it fits the period, but maybe, maybe not the, well, anyway, it's more of a New York thing. But then I started researching it, and then I found all these other pictures, including this one, New York history, and in German also. And then somewhere in here, I was looking for it, but I didn't find it. Oops, go away,
Wow.
go away. It keeps having a little pull
So
down
this
there.
is a blog.
Yeah. I'll put the links there. But then I found this ferry that was horse drawn.
Oh,
How do you, hold on a minute. Sorry. The little pull down keeps pulling over my, and I found it on that other page, but I didn't know where I couldn't find it now or on the phone, but this was the picture from it on the Zoom rather. This is the picture of it. And I said, oh, that must have been just somebody's imagination. But then I did a little more research, and there was something called a team boat. And there's actually pictures of it. Have you guys ever seen this before?
never.
So I mean, there's
Wow.
a picture, right? So it must, well, it's 1900, so I guess it goes back, well, and there were others earlier than that too, obviously, but I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
How did that make it? Yeah, let me see that. So that drives the paddles. Oh, right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and there's a patent.
Don't give that to Jerry, whatever you do.
if you want.
He would love that.
I mean, there's a patent for it, and I have to try to find the patent for it because maybe there's a little bit more detail of how they worked. Well, you can kind of see it here how they worked it out. But yeah, originally I thought maybe when the wagon gets on the ferry, maybe the horse kind of kicks in, but it looks like they have separate shacks for the horse that are driving the ferry.
Look at that. Wow, that is so cool. That's New York, 1819. 1819.
Yeah. That's why I was surprised at this picture. This picture
Chillicothe.
here. Yeah, some of them are a little more recent, like this one saying 1900.
Right.
But yeah, you would think that it would be before that. And there was a version of it with I forget. Anyway, all the ferries in New York where they showed them starting out as being horse-drawn, horse-pulled. I thought it's pretty cool.
Okay.
So I
Can you enlarge that picture of the, if you click on it, does it enlarge?
Oh yeah, there's lots of pictures on here. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of pictures on this one.
Look at that. Wow.
Isn't that totally cool?
Very.
I mean, I just had to share that with you because I never saw this before. And if you told me it existed, I would say no. But it has.
You know what I'm looking for? Oh, there it is. No, that's not it. I was looking for the tiller.
Oh, good question.
So they might have had a line running from one bank
I need
to
to
the other.
find this guy's patent because usually they work out stuff like that. But there's no tiller that's shown here, maybe in his patent.
Go back to that photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See the guy standing in the lower left in that long, is that the part of the frame of the ramp?
Yep.
That's part of the ramp.
That's what I was trying to
There's one
figure
on the
out, whether
right,
that was the
too.
ramp or whether he was using okay.
Yeah. No, maybe they kind of use the horse to direct it. They put a little more, effort on one side versus the other side. That could
Well,
also
if you
be
look
related.
to the lower left, there's a line that looks like it's coming from the bank through something on the boat.
Oh, there. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that is a line that connects all the way across the river, so it keeps it straight. Because you're right.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. That
You know
could
what's
be-
interesting in this picture compared to the diagram? Both of these horses are pointed in the same direction. There's the diagram, one's
Yeah.
pointed one way, one's pointed the other.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to see the patent, if he worked, because usually have to work out all those details in a patent back then. But yeah, they definitely show the horse, you're right, going in with a little turntable there. Maybe that was his innovation. Oh, I see what you're saying. In this case, you have no steering because both of them are turning the same wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Right.
see. I
But
kinda
if
missed that.
but if there was a line running, I mean, a lot of ferries had like a rope
Yeah.
from one bank to the next, and
Sure.
that could be the way it was controlled.
Sure, sure. So this is kind of a fun little thing that you can draw it out and you can just get a couple of pieces of wood and, kind of imagine something. So you had a little roof over it. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool. So, and, there's not too many things you could do wrong, but I must admit, I didn't think about how they steer it because you're talking about crossing a river. So obviously that has to be an issue. Now, I'm not sure how they would feel about putting a rope across the Hudson River. or
See,
even if
that
you could do
doesn't make
that.
sense either, right?
Doesn't make sense either. But some of these pictures were, I have to find the one from here, the original source, because he talked about the Hudson River. Yeah, and
That would
is
be a
it
cool-
bi-directional? Yes, it is, right?
Yeah.
It's just like a current ferry. It goes both
Yeah.
ways. You don't turn it around.
And yeah, and the other thing is, I could see building that as a water line model, so you don't have to build the
Keel.
So
yeah,
this
the
is
keel, but the blades of the
Hmm.
wheels.
So this is the crazy thing about our hobby is by chance I meet Andrew, we talk about these shad bellies, right? And then I find some pictures to share with him, which takes me deeper into a subject. And then in here I bump into something about a ferry that kind of got me so intrigued and it takes me down this direction. And then you're thinking, oh, it could be fun because it's, even if it didn't exist, and then you find out it did exist. So, and then you're right, you're thinking about problems like how do you do the steering?
But it looks like a relatively easy build.
Yes, exactly. And it's
Very
small and very straightforward. And you can use your little wagons and your little Preser figures and things like that. So the only complicated shape, I suppose, is getting this right, to cover the wheels. But even that you can
That would be relatively easy in the
Yeah.
grand schemes of
compared to,
things.
compared to
what?
everything else.
If you notice on the lower paddle wheel, there's a guy holding a staff. If that is like to
Yeah.
disengage the wheel, you could do the steering by having like
Oh,
the way a tank would turn.
I think you got it.
You could
Exactly.
disengage one paddle and engage the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you figured it out. And if you have just that one side, probably you're effectively controlling them both, but maybe has one on the other side also. But that's where I have to
Right.
find the pattern. If I, and because that would, they would work out those details.
Okay, in the drawing underneath it, it shows there is a rod going up next to that
Yep.
paddle wheel.
Yeah. And that could have been his patent because maybe the concept of using a horse, is not a big deal, but this whole mechanism of using a turntable and the universal here, and then have the slip clutch here to control the direction could be part of it. Now, when they turned it around, I guess when they go the other way, they just turn the horses around. So that's the way they solve that problem.
Or if that's what if that's more like a differential, and that part of what that could move is move something at that universal joint to change directions.
He does show something going there, but again, what we're talking about, 1819, that's pretty early on.
Well, that could be if it went rather than back and forth, went in and out, it could disengage.
Well, because you only need to, the only thing you need to do is be able to turn it back into the current. Because if you're crossing the river, the thing that'll do is push it downstream, and all you have to do is you can turn back into the current. So if you have the downstream paddle that remains functional all the time, and the one that's upstream needs to be turned off, so you can keep turning the ferry up back into the current. Then you're going to travel straight across because you're not going to turn it around because it's not a vehicle that's going to be turning and making all kinds of.
That would make a lot of sense because basically it's the same thing if you're in a rowboat.
Yep.
If you want to turn around, you just use the one paddle.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that cool? One thing leads to the next. So,
Can you post these, Vince?
Of course. Yeah.
Oh, this is so cool.
Brett's got to see this because he's got to put one of these on his Hudson River.
But this is so cool because even if you want, make a little canvas cover for it or something. Fulton, that's right. Fulton, I forgot about Fulton. Fulton had a ferry an early rendering that showed horses. Now, obviously, he applied steam pretty early on, but it had to start somewhere, right? So it started with horses. So. And also, weren't his ferries kind of like that they were side wheels? I gotta go
Yes.
and look. So I bet you if you took one of his early ferries and just put the steam engine here with the I forget what they call moving arm steam engine, I bet you it would fit. You know, the mechanism is something probably derived from this, right? Because
Yep.
one thing comes from the other. So that's the crazy thing about our hobby. Now I'm trying to make one of these working, right? But even a water line, well, I guess in a water line, you would, well, I guess you'd want to show a little bit of the paddle here. That would be a little hard to do, but it's possible. So.
Yeah,
So that,
I was gonna say that
I love
goes
it.
to the need of the modeler if they wanted to show that, but it's such a minute element. Just to see the ferry on the water would be quite extraordinary.
and nobody would believe it. And then you pull out the pictures, right? And, you know, I guess it makes sense. I mean, you had teams, horse teams pulling trolleys, right? New York around the time, and then you went to steam, and then the same thing with the ferries. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you read some of these articles, they talked about how it started with canals and how they would have, like in the Erie Canal, right? They would have the horse teams on either side pulling with the ropes. Maybe that's where the idea of the ropes came from, because you already had in canals. Crossing a river, I'm not quite sure, but like the Hudson, but maybe even the East River, I think would be hard. Any place in New York to have a rope across it, but we'll see. But yeah, I'll post these pictures. I thought it was pretty cool. So that's the crazy thing about our hobby is one thing leads to the other.
And how we keep uncovering things that very few people, if anybody, knew about, right?
Anybody, but yet 100 years ago they knew about, 200 years ago they knew about it. Just I guess we got so enamored with steam that you forgot about what came before it. But yeah, I'll post these along with the steam dummies for Andrew.
Wow.
So
Cool.
yeah, so little projects like this just keep me busy. And also I have to find some of the steam dummies that we did. Those are probably about 10, 15 years ago, but they were, back then it was a Ken Kidder.
Yeah.
I mean, that was way even, and you could still find them today. That was way before then, but we'd take some of those and just paint them up and decorate them. And there were a couple of other books. I can't remember. Well, we're going in a different direction. But even in San Francisco, they had steam dummies before they had the cable cars. So that was another area that interests me. So here we're talking about New York, but San Francisco had kind of an maybe all cities did around that time. I don't know. They started with horses, they moved to steam dummies, and then they moved to electrification and overhead, or in the case of San Francisco, the cables. They talked about the, we don't talk much in the group about the Forneys. Maybe they came a little later, but that always interests me because it's a 440 turned around, right? You just have the lead truck is the drive, and essentially the, what you think of where the cab is in a Forney would be the pilot truck, just turned around. And they were very popular in New York. Now, I'm not sure why they weren't popular on road engines. It seems like they should be, but maybe they weren't. Or maybe the patent was too expensive or something. But that was the other thing that interests me. So I have a couple of Forneys too from that period.
Oh, an HO scale?
HO scale, yeah. Yeah. There were quite a few that were made. There was a guy, they're more popular for narrow gauge because what they did is after they were done with them, the transition in New York was pretty quick from, well, when steam dummies didn't last very long, then they went to the Forneys, and the Forneys maybe 10, 20 years, I don't know. But then when they started electrification, all of a sudden they had, New York has lots of these things, maybe 200 Forneys or something like that, they're unloading. So around that time, they had a lot of logging railroads, and they would buy these. and then they would convert them to narrow gauge, right? Because as Andrew was reminding me, the New York overhead was all standard gauge. So they'd convert them to narrow gauge and then use them in the logging railroads. So a lot of people doing, HON3 or HON30 for that matter, have a lot of these fornies. So that's really what they're used for. But early on, they were used for the elevated trains. So I have a couple of those also.
Cool.
So I'm trying to think. There was a guy in New York. Oh, MTS Models. I think he's passed. I'm sure he's passed away by now. But he did a lot of those kinds of things back then. I think he was in upstate New York somewhere. And he also made trolleys, open bench trolleys. There was a company before that, I think called Fairfield, who also made them. So there was like a succession of people doing that kind of work. I haven't seen anybody lately. Maybe Andrew, who knows? We'll see. We can only hope. So.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Andrew and this guy, Andy, and there's another guy, I think that's in our group. They're all from the New York Railroad Historical Society.
I'm sorry, it is Andrew. Did I say? I think it's Andrew, right? Or did I
It
say-
is.
well,
We have an
okay,
Andrew and an Andy.
Andrew and well, our son is named Andrew, but yeah, so Andy is the short for Andrew, but yeah, I thought he went by Andrew.
Oh, and there's an Andrew Andrade. No, Andrew, another guy. He's an older gentleman. That's all that shows up once in a while.
Okay.
He's in our division. So we have two Andys from the New York Railroad Historical Society.
Okay. Okay. Oh, then they would know all about we're always uncovering things, so I guess I should never assume people know something.
Right.
So, that's what we learned. And then we're talking the other day about the, the curator, help me, at the Smithsonian, who wrote all the books on the
John
railroads.
White.
Yes. He also wrote something on steam dummies. And I have the book, and if you hold on a minute, let me just grab it.
John White, quite prolific.
I guess I can't find it that quickly, sorry. Maybe it's in here. No, I can't find it that quickly. But he also wrote for one of those magazines, almost a book, like 70 pages just on steam dummies. So just on steam dummies. And it had all kinds of research and all that. And I have the book, and I think parts of it are available in PDF, so I'll find a way to publish that. It's not that rare. I mean, you can find it nowadays, but with a little bit of like John Ott, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, John Ott. A little bit of research, you find that name, you're researching steam dummies, and you find that name, oh, this has got to be good. And it was. So I found the book. I have found pieces of the PDF, and I'll try to post that as well, because all the drawings that Andrew and Andy could ever want are in there, and the whole roster and all that, what was produced in New York. And they also had, gosh, I don't remember all the stories now, but even that went through an evolution. We just think of it as one thing, but that one thing probably lasted about 20 or 30 years. I mean, maybe it died pretty quickly, but it evolved a lot over the years. And they talked about the different people who made them. John Ott, obviously. I mean, you pick up one of those books and then you're done for a couple of days just digging into it.
If you look at the railway history, you'll find a lot of articles that John White wrote.
John White.
But he used the pseudonym Steam Dome. So if you see something written by Steam Dome, it's actually John White.
Interesting. Well, even when I was looking up this ferry and I looked up horse-powered ferry book, and I wasn't a horse-powered ferry boat, and then I wasn't really picking up as much. Then when I went team ferry, right? Because horse team, found more words. So sometimes Google's not so good with these older terms. But yeah, that's interesting. There was another one, and I know the group here, and these exist as PDFs also, but they worked out they get all these little books. Andrew and Andy talked about that, right? In fact, maybe they wrote these, I don't know. But some of them they even worked out all the stations that they would show. I guess back then, before they had the internet, they would, people like our group would get together and write these little books publishing their research. Here it is.
And that's from the New York.
This is from the Tracts of New York.
Right.
Yeah, this PDF exists. I'll post the PDF because the pictures are great, like this one, right? I mean, how can you beat that? Just look,
Yeah.
I mean, and just all the life. Like in this picture, it's hard for me to look upside down. But what were these people doing? I mean, they're just piled on this big vehicle moving down the street. I mean, you could spend so much time, just like we were in the ferry, just talking about, like, what is that vehicle all about?
Right. Right.
Life back then. So that's what I've been working on just some research and spending time on a little boat here. So
Hey Vince, could you go to the wooden team boat horse ferry?
yes.
That one again. Oh, yeah.
That's the picture of it. Let me go back to the main. There's all kinds of pictures though. If you do any kind of, see if we can find that. Horse-powered ferry. Yeah. You'll find lots of pictures if you do, like that one's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And that one, experimental version. So I thought these two are the best too, right? Because they're showing one in actual use and then one showing all the mechanisms, but there are lots of nice pictures of these. But I will try to find the patent as well, because I think we'll learn a lot from that.
Yep. That's fascinating.
Yeah. This one is cool too. Let's see. With the horse kind of galloping, right?
Yeah.
You just pull onto the boat, you pull onto the ferry and you use your horse to get you across the river.
Yep. It's a coach on water. You got the driver, the horse, except instead of wagon wheels, it's paddle wheels.
Yes, yes, yes. But as far as I know, John White didn't write anything about this. He just wrote about steam locomotives or steam dome, as you're pointing out. So,
Hoof beats over the water. That's good. Thank you.
yeah, beats over the water. And so hopefully that's a little interesting. And I'll post these, especially this one. I'll post the links and the
Love it.
pictures.
I love it.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how I could work it into phase 2.
Well, he talked about also flat car loads once. I mean, this is a flat car load, right? I guess it could be built somewhere and put in a little car to be transported, you know. So it could also be sitting on a flat car somewhere. So
Yeah.
So what's the update on your work there, DC?
I don't have any pictures downloaded to the computer. I've got the stringer that I was going to sister 2 stringers together for the on the one side of the basement stairs. I got that cut, and this morning I went out to get some pieces of wood needed replaced, and I needed to get some 8-penny nails. So I've taken them apart. So to get downstairs now, you have to go outside the house, around to the Bilko door, down to the basement that way, because it's about an 8-foot drop. So yeah, I don't have photos that I can share with you guys yet. So I don't think so. Anyways, let's see. Let's see. That doesn't, no. That doesn't do it. That doesn't help. No, I have to wait on that. But it's coming slowly, very slowly but surely.
The surely part that matters.
Yes.
Hopefully it'll be done in my lifetime.
But if you enjoy doing it, DC, does it matter if you make it to the end?
Well, that's true. That's true. Let someone else deal with all the. What the heck was this stuff?
Yeah, that's good. Cool.
So
All right. So, yeah, Ron.
I was just gonna say, so my grandson has those little wooden Thomas the Train tracks.
Yeah.
So I was up visiting for his birthday. So obviously we got him more train stuff. So he can go from like one end of the house to the next end of the house. He has so much of that stuff. So we got him. So he's been asking for it because everything you have to push by hand. So he's been asking for an electric Thomas. All right. So that's what we got him for his birthday, was some battery powered Thomas the Train. So then I had to explain to him that to make sure these operate correctly, the radius of your turns. Now remember, this is a 5-year-old turning 6. That he has to have the radius of his turns has to be so large so that the train will navigate the turns. So and I don't know if he's paying any attention to this at all. So we leave, and like 2 days later, we Zoom call him and see how everything's going and everything. And she's like, yeah, he had his dad down on the floor, and they're building this train set, or they're redesigning a layout, and he's saying, he's being insistent that no, you have to have an easement and you have to have big radius for your turns, or the trains won't navigate. They thought it was just awesome. And then he's like, so he's the motivation, because then when he calls me, he goes, so how's your train set coming, Papa?
That's wonderful.
I'm trying to get him started young.
Right. So when he gets older, he can come play with Gramps.
Yes, indeed.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So I've got some of those poachers. So when he comes, those I give him those, and you can play on the floor. You don't get to play with the ones Al made.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I got my grandson a Thomas the Tank Engine a number of years ago, and the electric one, so they could set it up at Christmas. And he had a friend came over, and so I had to get him another Thomas the Tank Engine because the friend tried to run it on the floor. On electric, and fortunately I was able to fix the original one and repaint it so it didn't look like Thomas. So
how old's your grandson?
Fun. Oh gosh, I don't know how old he is now. I don't know.
About?
He's almost a teenager.
Oh.
He's taller than his mom now, and she's a tall lady. So he's almost as tall as me.
He needs an upgrade, man.
Skinny dude.
He needs an upgrade. Keep
Really.
that hook in there.
He's playing with his dad's trains now too.
Oh, good.
Cool.
So, not his granddad's trains, his dad's trains.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I don't want to interrupt that story. I did find the John White book that I was talking about. So he wrote, I guess this was Railroad History. You look at that cover, right? And this is 1990. They were produced forever, much earlier than that. And I think maybe even today. But there was an article by John White in there on spunky little devils. Pages long. And I don't know when he died, but this is 1990. It was published. It was pretty late in his career, right? I think maybe he died in the mid-90s. I'm not sure. But he worked out everything, usual style, even the boilers, the rosters. He had pictures of one of them when it was produced, and then when it was at the end of its life, so you can kind of see all the open, crevices and things like that. So anybody doing research, and then rosters, of course, anybody doing research in this, And I did find there are PDFs available for it, so I'll try to post it, or if there's specific things, these are available, right? If anyone
Yeah.
gets involved in that level, and I'm pretty sure Andrew and Andy have this, but yeah, when I started looking at it, spunky little devils, right? Pointing to John Ott. And the other one that I found that was interesting, and let me see if I can share that here.
He must have been retired at that point.
Yeah, but this one, let's see, go back to my share, and we're almost out of time anyway. Share screen, okay, share. Okay, this one goes back to 1936 at the Stanford Library. And this is the original source for all this when they started doing these New York elevated railroads. So, and there are pictures at the end of it here, but they're telling the whole story.
Wow.
Pretty con.
Was that a car underneath the train?
Obviously, it's a rendition of something, but yeah, who knows?
Oh,
Maybe
right.
they
It's
had
not
the
right.
idea. They had the idea of having the steam power on top and then the passengers underneath, right? And then
Wild.
And I think they had, if you go back to the early drawings here, they had this concept of pneumatic. When I think of pneumatic, I think of air, but maybe where they were using they were pushing, stationary engines were pushing the passengers back and forth using cables or pulleys or pneumatic, more like Disneyland kind of things, I guess.
Right.
But that's what this is all about, going back to,
Oh,
and
look at
here, actually one of the John White pictures shows this later in life, this little vehicle that they used in the testing. I'm not sure whatever happened to it.
Experimental version.
Yeah, experimental versions, right? But they talked about all the financing and things. And the big thing for them was they wanted to go to, Midtown, right? So Lower Manhattan to Midtown. That was a big project. And eventually they had ambitions of going all the way up to Yonkers, right? So going through the Bronx up to Yonkers, but you got to start somewhere. So, and this was a lot of the articles were leading to this one as an early source for the history. So somehow I tracked this down through Google and the Stanford Library. So anyway, if you ever really want to dig into the subject, there's a lot of good information out there. I think I can post that because it's public, it's just a Google thing. So I'll put that up as well. But it's more on the history than pictures and the characters involved in doing this. And one of them was a Civil War general, by the way, who was involved in the early days of these railroads. So anyway, there's lots of connections.
Yeah. Yeah, there were quite a few former officers that went on to work for different railroads.
They had the government connections. They talked about that in here. They knew, they had all the government connections you needed for the funding and getting the rights and things like that. And they had the mechanical skills, right, sometimes, and they knew how to organize people to do work. So they had a lot of the right things to be successful.
Right.
For a copyright, just as for your information about posting stuff, copyrights last the lifetime of the author plus 70 years.
Yeah. And I can't imagine, well, I think he's long gone. Oh, well, 70 years, I don't know. Well, Google has it posted, right? So they must have.
Well, that's a 1978 standard. So the standard may have been previous to that, the life of the author.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we're not violating any. He's not gonna have any descendants come back and send Tom an email and want to know why this is up.
Some groups get all carried away on that, and as they should. And but I can't imagine. I think if somebody took something I did and 70 years later, 100 years later, whatever, built something based upon it, I'd be happy. If they thought it was significant enough.
So, right. Yeah, it says
you're not making money off of it, so you're not profiting from it. So
right, that's the key. And it says that's why you post that up there, Vince, because it affirms pretty much what you're saying. It says we have determined this work to be in the public domain, meaning that it is not subject to copyright.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. Good.
Cool. All right, gentlemen, it's about that time. God, it always, it's funny how it just takes on a life of its own due to everyone's contribution here. So thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next time. If anybody has any suggestions, let me know. Oh, by the way, May 29th, I probably won't be here. I think I'm going to have a meeting with a client and his client. So Roger, if you want to pick up the baton for that one.
Sure.
Yep.
After all, I'm presenting at that time. So what the hell, right?
Cool. All right. Great.
Right, DC, when
Right.
or actually Tom, when I was put on there.
Good.
It's a good thing, makes me do something, for God's sake,
So we'll title that one Layout Updates and see if anybody else wants to contribute.
Right. And I'll start asking once I get done with mine, for sure.
Good.
Sounds great.
Okay, y'all, enjoy your day.
Yep.
All right.
Enjoy the
See
weekend.
you. Thanks.
Bye-bye now.
Have fun.